What's up is Way Up with Angela Yee, and we have Congressman James E. Clyburn with us today. A really important time for you to be here, and you also have this book, The First Eight, A Personal History of the Pioneering Black Congressman Who Shaped a Nation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And this is a great history lesson for me. You know, not being from South Carolina and understanding the relevance and the huge role that South Carolina has played when it comes to civil rights, this was important as a read for me.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I think that people tend to believe that because of the way things were reported along the way, South Carolina took on sort of a waywardness. Mm-hmm. For instance, you know South Carolina mostly because of the Civil War.
Yeah. People
will say that's where the Civil War began. Well, if you look at the history of the country, South Carolina is where the real consequential battles of the Civil War, of the Revolutionary War,
yes,
took place. And you go back and you look at where these real critical battles were that really changed the fortunes of the Revolutionary War. They were basically in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Now, South Carolina has never been a part of the whole media network. You go to the Civil Rights era, what I call the student movement part of the Civil Rights era, because there's been a civil rights fight ever since black people came to this country
right
in 1619. But if you go through that student era when media began to dictate everything, they focused on Mississippi, Alabama, and even Georgia. It was never South Carolina, though Brown v. Board of Education started in South Carolina. And Brown, the name came from Kansas, and so people associated it with Kansas. But the original case, Briggs v. Elliott, the people who signed the original suit, they were from Clarendon County, South Carolina. I grew up with those people, and I knew them. And if you just look through history, and one of the reasons I wanted to write this book is because just after I finished my memoir that I call Blessed Experiences, and the reason I call that book Blessed Experiences, there were two reasons. One, Blessed Assurance was my dad's favorite hymn, and it seemed to really incent him to really dig deep in himself. He used to spend all day Saturday writing his sermons, and he would be reading and writing and would always be humming that hymn. And so it was sort of an ode to my dad. Mm-hmm. But the second reason is because I learned early that we can be no more, no less than what our experiences allow us to be. And I said in the introduction to the book, all of my experiences have not been pleasant.
Yeah.
But I've considered all of them to be blessings. I learned from those. It wasn't pleasant for me.
Listen, you talk about that in the book as well. Even, look, I think sometimes we also think about, I'm from New York, right? Mm-hmm. And so even like the Confederate flag still being placed amongst the flags, and that was something that you wanted to fight against.
Right.
But you even would get sometimes threatening letters
sure.
about things like that. And you talk about that in the book as well. When you think about people sending threats to you during your public service career. You said when you were State Human Affairs Commissioner, you got a letter in 1987 signed by a larger-than-you-think group. And it told you they've heard you run your mouth about our flag on the State House long enough. Best to shut your mouth before somebody pops a bullet between your eyes. Right. I couldn't even imagine getting a letter or letters, because I'm sure you've had several instances, but you framed that.
Yeah. If you go to my office in Columbia right now, you see that. And there were 3 other letters that got in a big frame, and I called it All in a Day's Work.
Yeah.
Because these threatening letters are there. And then in the bottom right corner is a letter from a young lady who was in college and was not going to be able to finish college. She had one semester to go, and she was $600 short of paying the tuition, and they would not let her enroll. Well, I gathered the resources to get her back in college. And she wrote me this great letter about what that meant. If that lady were to walk in here now, I would not know her. I don't remember her
but
name.
She would know you.
Yeah, but that's the way I did things in South Carolina. And so this book was all about that. People should know these people.
Right. Yes, the first 8.
The first 8.
And you made sure that you also hung up their portraits.
All 8 of them
All
on the
8
wall
of
of my office. And what incented me to do the book was visitors to my office. One group came one day and they saw these pictures and asked me, who are these people? And when I told them, one of them said, I thought you were the first black person to serve in Congress from South Carolina. And I kind of playfully said, oh no, before I was first, there were 8. And I told my staff that day, my next book is going to be about these 8 people. And so I started writing the book, just keeping a little, I wasn't really serious.
How long ago was this? I'm just
this
curious.
This was about...
Because I'm thinking about the times that we're in right now and the parallels that you draw from 2025,
Sure.
to back in the 1800s.
Well, this incident took place about 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
My memoir was published 10 years ago, 2015. And this conversation took place a year or so later, right after I became whip the first time. That's when I first put all the pictures up. Well, in the middle of writing this book, 2020 elections came. And the reaction
to you
to the 2020 elections was so familiar to me.
Right.
I said, people were asking me all the time, have you ever seen anything like this before? I says, no, that's only because I wasn't living in 1876 when it was just like this. I recognized it. I used to teach this stuff. And I says, wait a minute. They're trying to overturn this election and doing it by using a playbook from 1876 presidential election. And New York played a role in that because the 2 candidates for president at that time were from New York and Ohio. And the New York guy came up 1 vote short, Samuel Tilden. And the Electoral College at that time, you needed 185. He had 184. Rutherford B. Hayes from Ohio, the Republican, had 165. So he was 20 votes short. Well, a deal was cut, not to give up too much that's in the book, but a deal was cut for Hayes to get those votes, which meant those 20 votes allowed him to go from 165 to 185. He became president by 1 vote. So anybody that tells you 1 vote does not matter, tell them about this story.
Right.
Because what happened? When he became president by 185 to 184, he brought an end to Reconstruction. That's the promise he made. You all give me these 20 votes.
And I'm going to do what you need me to do.
I'm going to do what you need to do.
How hard is it in politics to not do what people need you to do that are the ones that are funding campaigns? Because I've always felt like politicians can have the best intentions, but then there's some type of accountability when somebody elects you and there's people that are funding you and there's certain things that they have expectations of. Like, what is the balance with that?
Well, that's the way that society is set up. And that's what where you and I come in, and we have to fight off that because I used to be in this business. My daughter was my partner who's here with me today. Mignon and I, that's not the daughter in the corner there, but we were in this business, and I can tell you, I know what it is when you are dependent upon advertising. This grocery store, you want them to get a full-page ad in your newspaper, and all of a sudden, the owner of the grocery store wants you to say something or write something favorable.
Right.
So I know what that pressure is. Those pressures are in the media, and they're in politics.
Yes.
And they're in the church. We'll help you with your fundraiser, your building fund. But we need favorable sermons coming from you. My father was a minister.
Yes.
I grew up in a parsonage. So I know about all these pressures. And so I step back when people tell me, oh, we don't have that kind of pressure. Come on. What just happened with the Washington Post? The owner of the Washington Post.
Even these TV networks right now.
Absolutely.
That's been, yeah.
Yeah. Kamala Harris was being endorsed by the Washington Post until the owner of the Post said, oh, no, we ain't doing that. He nixed the endorsement. And now we know who won. And now all of a sudden, the Washington Post, we aren't fact-checking anymore. And I was on the train coming up here with Eugene Robinson, who is from South Carolina. Mm-hmm. But Eugene says, no, I'm not taking this. I'm resigning. And he is an opinion writer for the Washington Post. So these things are in the system. And it's what happened to these guys.
Yeah.
I wish you'd see the headlines. When you read this book, you're going to see the headlines about them, what they were saying about these guys.
Yeah.
And some people believe it.
Yeah, I mean, media plays such an important role. I feel like there's more misinformation than ever just because there's so much access for anybody to write anything. And it's so hard to understand as an average person what's real and what's not. Like we're upset that there's Democrats who have sided with the Republicans without coming to an official resolution on what's happening with the Affordable Care Act or what type of health plan is in place for people so their insurance isn't going to triple in January.
Sure.
And we're hearing, well, some people are like, well, they should have done that because Trump is not going to budge and they'll fight this out in December. But I want to hear from you because, like I said, we hear all these different things depending on what network you're watching or who you're listening to, but you're in it.
I'm in the middle of it, and I don't fear it at all. I think I relish the battle. But the fact is, this is never... It's not nobody. People don't realize this because most people don't think about these things. But we just heard a proposal coming from this president saying that what he would like to see to address affordable housing
is a 50-year mortgage.
50-year mortgage.
Which is insane. We'll never have equity. You'll never own your home. The banks will get rich.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, you watch and see how many people go out here and start talking about the 50-year mortgage. It means you buy a $400,000 house, and over that 50-year period of the mortgage, it's about $1.2 million that you pay for the house. Now, subtract $400,000 from $1.2 million, you got $800,000 that's going to somebody. Who is that somebody, or who are those somebodies that will make all the money off the $800,000 house? And you would never have equity in the house. You would never be able to pass equity to your children.
Interest rates would be crazy on that, the longer the loan is.
That's exactly right. Now, that's not new. When Social Security first came online in the 1930s, it was regarded as the greatest poverty program ever. But when Social Security went online, people who were in domestic employment or people who were in agricultural employment were not allowed into Social Security. 65% of the black folks in this country were in those two fields, which meant only 35% of the black people in this country were eligible for Social Security. But that's not the worst, because at the time that they put Social Security in place, which is why I have never been a fan of Franklin Roosevelt, they set the retirement age at 65. What was life expectancy of black people in the 1930s?
Ooh.
58, which meant that no black person was ever going to get the benefit theoretically. Now, some people live beyond 55, but theoretically, you were not supposed to get the benefit. So what it means, you're going to pay all your life into Social Security, but by the time you get to the year, you're going to be dead.
You know, it's so interesting to me that we think about like getting people out to vote and reading this book. And I know we always say that, like, we really fought and people died for our right to vote. But when you see how people were intimidated by the Ku Klux Klan, I mean, and still managed, though, to get out and vote and do with it. But no matter what, like moving where the ballot box was, all of the different tactics that were used, it's interesting to me to see how people are not going out. Just seeing how people fought for that. I know it's cliche because everyone says that, but when you really see these stories about the Ku Klux Klan, how they came up into existence, and the tactics that they were using to make sure that voices weren't heard, I feel like sometimes we don't fight hard enough today.
You're right about that. And what we have to do, and what this book is all about, is showing you that this is not new.
Right.
Back then, when they formed all of these, they call them the rifle clubs, the Ku Klux Klan, in some places, basically in Tennessee, though they came to South Carolina, they were throughout the South. These rifle clubs, they're no longer in existence for that purpose, but we now got the Proud Boys. Mm-hmm. They're there by other names. When they did this back in the 1870s, at the time that this book covers, they told everybody, wear red shirts.
The red shirts,
yes. They were called the red shirts. Mm-hmm. Today, wear red caps or red ties.
MAGA.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. And I'll tell you something else. You might be wondering, why is it this president is calling on the National Guard? Read this book, and you will see
how the National Guard
was used. The so-called Hamlin Massacre, it was all about the National Guards. Mm-hmm. And these confrontations that you see being formed by ICE, these are the same kinds of confrontations that were used back in these 1870s. So, as I said, I'm in the middle of writing this book, and all of a sudden, this stuff starts happening.
The Amnesty Act, you talk about that.
Yeah.
And the comparison to the Amnesty Act and the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol.
And all those people who led the insurrections against the government were pardoned by President Andrew Johnson. As soon as Abraham Lincoln was murdered, he issued pardons for all those people. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it sure does. 2021. And you were there at the Capitol. You had to evacuate at that time. Right. How is it sitting in the same spaces with people that you know were calling? I just don't know how. I mean, I know it's part of what comes with the job, but mentally, how is that for you?
Tough. There are some people that I don't sit with. And, you know, I know it's not a blanket against Republicans. Mm-hmm. My mother and father were Republicans, but this is not the Republican Party they were in. People don't look at this history, and therefore they don't understand that all 8 of these people in this book
were Republicans.
They were Republicans.
Which is so weird to get used to reading these black people were Republicans and how things switched, you know, the way that they have today, with Democrats being the party that cares more about people.
Well, let me tell you in simple terms what happened. In 1948, the Democratic Party decided that it was going to chart a new direction. And when they did, Strom Thurmond was the leader from South Carolina. He bolted the Democratic Party. He formed the States' Rights Party. He ran for president against Harry Truman. Harry Truman was a Democrat who he was the first president to address the NAACP. He integrated the armed services. He did everything that black folks were trying to get Roosevelt to do it, and Roosevelt wouldn't do it. And so when this happened, and then followed by a speech by Hubert Humphrey. They decided they were going to leave the Democratic Party. So all of these people who were white supremacists that I call in the book redeemers, trying to redeem the South through its pre-Civil War days, all of these people left the Democratic Party. And they went over and took the Republican Party from black folks, because black folks were basically Republicans, and drove them out. They took over the party. So the Democrats that were left were the pro-civil rights Democrats. So then they had to build up a party, and it lasted right up to Kennedy and Johnson. And then Johnson culminated it. I'm talking about Lyndon Johnson, not Andrew Johnson.
Yeah,
Lyndon Johnson then got the Civil Rights Act passed in 64, the Voting Rights Act in 65, the Fair Housing Law in 68, and every time he passed a law, another Republican got mad, and they all left. And so they're now camped out in the Republican Party. So it's very easy to see what happened. And so when people tell you, oh, you know, I'm a good Republican, Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican. I don't know if Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican, but I know his daddy was.
right. Yeah. It's the history of it that people have to understand.
Absolutely.
Because people put these statements out there with no type of context.
No type of context at all, and people run with it, and they get it looped out here in the media, and people, intelligent people should know better, and they seem not to pay attention to it, but I do.
So what do you think needs to happen now? Just because we're in the midst of all of this, and I know that there is this, people are going through it right now with benefits cut, with people not getting paid to work, with a lot of things being more difficult. We also have tariffs on top of everything else, a lot of things that we're battling right now. And then, of course, healthcare, which is a huge, huge issue, which in January, people will really see what type of issue that is if things don't happen. What should we be looking for to happen now, would you say?
Can I be basic just for a moment?
Yeah.
I stayed married to the same woman for 58 years. We had a lot of disagreements. We were not always on the same page. You do not have to have unanimous thought to have unity. We, my late wife and I, were always unified. I have now 3 daughters. Grown, I have 4 grandchildren. We have discussions. We have disagreements. And we talk through those disagreements. What we do know is that it's us against the world. And that's the basic stuff you have to apply to politics. Which party does the most for your basic needs? It may not do everything.
Nope.
You know, it's this whole thing. We get angry about one issue, and I says, okay, I did a show last night, and someone was telling me about the price of eggs have gone down, and the price of bread or something. I forgot. I said, okay. What about the price of milk? So you have to balance everything. And so I think that what we have to do in politics is learn. You are not going to get 100% of what you want out of this process. So you balance the interests. He says, okay, I'm getting 10% of what this party over here is offering me 10%. This party over here is offering me 70%. Which would you take?
Right.
So why do you make your decisions about the 70% party based upon the 10% that you get from the other side?
I think it's also interesting that when we vote, we also, that's like just part of the job. There's other things that we're also responsible for doing, which is holding people accountable for what it is that we need and want.
Yeah.
You can't just sit back and be like, this didn't happen. Like, there's certain actions that people can take and be vocal about it to make things happen. And I think it's important to show up. Like, I've hosted town halls, and I'm like, it's pretty empty here.
Yeah.
But people have things that they need and that they want, but they just expect things to just happen. And it doesn't really work like that. Even encouraging people to run for office that you would like to see in office. And you actually ran for office several times before you actually landed.
I lost 3 times.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine came to me and says, what you going to do now? You know what they say, 3 strikes and you're out. I said, nobody should live their life by baseball rules. That's a baseball rule. And I don't care how many times, your mother and father, I know how many times you heard it said, if at first you don't succeed, you try and try again. They didn't say try 1 more time or 2 more times. No numerical limit. If I had quit after losing 3 times, I never would have become the number 3 guy in the United States House of Representatives, which is what I became. Well, number 4 technically, but on the Democratic side, number 3. Now, when you look at this, and I try to say to young people all the time, I just got off the phone with my grandson earlier today. He's 32 years old, and he called me because he wants to know, how are you going to vote on this bill that the Senate just passed last night, and then you're going to vote on tomorrow? And I walked him through why I'm going to vote no. And I might tell your listeners, I'm voting no simply because this guy says we're going to put this bill on the floor and I'm not going to guarantee anything. Well, you can guarantee the votes that I need to break the filibuster, even if you aren't for the bill.
Right.
So don't tell me you're going to put something on the floor and then you allow the filibuster to keep it from coming to a vote. You just got 8 votes from the Democratic side to cut off the filibuster so that you can get your 51 votes. Well, give us 13 votes on the other side to cut off the filibuster and let us take our chances on whether or not we get 51 votes. No promise has been made to that.
Right.
So my whole thing is be clear with what you're going to do and be substantive with all of this. And so that's why I'm going to vote no.
You know, it's interesting, too, because I've seen a lot of conversations about how people expect that Democrats are always going to be the ones that have to be responsible and get blamed for a lot of different things that are going on for what they haven't done. But Republicans aren't held to the same standard.
They're not.
It's because the expectations are low for what people expect. And I feel like also going on the record for what it is that you stand for your constituents who are also suffering, because more Republicans, you know, their base is also having issues too. It's not like everybody's doing well there. They're not all the 1%. Most of them are not. And so to see that their whole base is suffering, and we've seen, I think, with these last elections too, what the result of that can be. You know, there are some things that actually can end up being something that's a bonus in the midst of all of this, if that makes sense.
It makes a whole lot of sense. You know, look, you talked about health care. The Affordable Care Act, no matter what they may say to the contrary, it was to make health care affordable. It wasn't to make it cheaper, as people say. No, it was to make it affordable. So why do we say, because there's this cost, we are going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act? What will you put in its place?
There's no plan.
There is no plan.
I haven't seen Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we never would think would be talking about that, discussing how upset she is that there's no plan.
There's no plan.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't plan to make a plan. My late wife suffered with diabetes for 30 years. I saw her insulin bill, anywhere from $600 to $800 every month.
Ooh.
She was a full shot a day diabetic. So for 30, about 58 years, she battled diabetes. Now, she died from diabetes only after a heart attack that required 5-vessel bypass surgery, back surgery, total kidney failure, and a stroke. Now, without insurance, where would she be?
Right.
Without Medicare, where would she be? Without Social Security. All of these things are under attack by the Republican Party. And so why do you tell me you see some value in supporting the Republican Party when the party that is advocating all of this is the Democratic Party? So this whole thing is so crazy to me. And I don't understand. It is so simple. You may not need it. You know,
Right now, you
yes,
never know when you'll need it,
you
though.
never know.
Yeah.
And so this whole,
Like one of the reasons that people end up, going broke is because of healthcare. That's
It's
one
the
of the
main-
main reasons.
it's
Yeah.
the main reason that people end up in
And you don't
bankruptcies.
anticipate it. It's not
Right.
anything you could predict. Nobody thinks one day I'll be sick, one day I'll have to go to the hospital, one day I'll have an emergency, one day I'll need surgery. You
Right.
don't really think that ever.
No, you never.
Mm-hmm.
You never plan to be sick, but you should insure against what the consequences are of that. And that's why we have these kinds of efforts, like the Affordable Care Act. Nobody plans to be denied housing, and that's why you have fair housing laws. Not because you plan to, but
Right.
because there's somebody who may be planning against your having these things. Martin Luther King just said all the time, the law can't make you love me, but the law sure can keep you from harming me. And that's what we're trying to do here. So when people come up with all this crazy stuff about the law won't do this and the law won't do that, the law will not do a whole lot of things. But if I have health care and healthy enough to work, then I can
Yeah, I feel
earn
like these
a
are
decent living.
fundamental things.
Absolutely.
Like it's not even, nobody's asking for nothing crazy. It's fundamental rights that we should have. When you talk about this first 8 in this book that you have right now, I want to know who you relate to the most. You characterize one as a persuader, one as the appeaser, one as the orator, and the different degrees of success that they have dealing with the, quote, Redeemer Democrats,
Sure.
which is like MAGA,
Yeah.
right, which we would compare to MAGA. How would you characterize your style?
I am basically a combination of several of them.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Miller, who was number 7 among the 8. Thomas Miller was the first president of South Carolina State. When he got kicked out of Congress, he became the first president of what is now South Carolina State,
University.
the school that I graduated from. Robert Smalls, in so many instances, he had the guts. I mean, like when
He risked
people
his
threatened
life.
him,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Risked his life.
Oh, he was arrested, put in jail. All of these guys were subjected to this stuff. So throughout the years, I have associated with many of the guys here. In fact, Richard Kane, who used to preach right here.
Yeah.
Bridge.
That was the AME
Street,
church, right?
Bridge Street AME Church. He left New York and went to Charleston. And he's the one that reestablished Emmanuel AME Church.
Mm-hmm.
He's the founder
With the
of
history
Morris
that
Brown
that
AME
church
Church.
has.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I look at a combination of all of them, and I can see a lot, and I've picked up a lot from them. I've also looked at them and decided which one of them I did not want to be like.
Let me guess.
Well, DeLarge was my least favorite person.
I could tell.
Yeah. And so one of the reasons I wanted this book to be out there, because I want people like yourself to look at these guys, see what they went through, and this is not to say that they were perfect. They were not. They did not all get along with each other. They had their individual differences. But I'll tell you this, even DeLarge, Robert Brown Elliott, literally hated DeLarge. And he really said some horrible things about him, and you find it in this book. But DeLarge got in trouble, and they were trying to kick him out of office. Who represented him? Robert Brown Elliott. And to keep them from kicking him out of office. And they didn't kick him out of office, but because he had become so obnoxious to so many people, he got voted out of office.
Right.
And he, too, had real serious health problems. He died at 39 years old.
I want to, before we wrap this, I want to talk about something else you said in the book. Today, some 60 years after the advances of the 1960s, we are again witnessing parallels to the backlash of the first Reconstruction, and for similar reasons. Census officials project that white Americans will become a minority of the U.S. population by 2045. Some feel uneasy about these changing demographics and are directing their insecurities at governmental efforts, such as affirmative action and other diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which are rapidly being dismantled. Much of the potential rhetoric on the far right seems designed to divide, exclude, and insult rather than honor America's motto, e pluribus unum, out of many one. The political pendulum is again moving to the right. The question is, how far will it go and for how long? If you had to predict the answer to that question, what would you say?
Well,
because I'm wondering how long is this going on and when is this coming to, like, what are we doing about it?
well, I would say this. One of the reasons for the book is to ask, have we learned the lessons of history, or are we going to allow ourselves to repeat them? These people, at one point, South Carolina had 5 congresspeople representing the state in Washington. Of that 5, 4 were black. 4 of these people served along with one white guy. That was in the 1870s. And what happened in the 1890s? Because of rogue Supreme Court, it went to 0. So it meant that when the pendulum went right that time, it was 95 years before I came along. Now the question is, are we going to do what is necessary to interrupt that rightward shift, that pendulum going to the right? Or are we going to turn up at the polls when it's time to vote? Or are we going to sit down with candidates and make sure that we get people in office who are dedicated to the dreams and aspirations that you want for your children and your grandchildren? Or are you going to sit back and say, this too shall pass? My daddy was a minister, and he used to say to me all the time, son, you pray every day, but you pray for good health and strength. And if the good Lord gives you some modicum of that, get up off your knees and work like hell. That was his motto. And I believe that today. This whole thing about just leave it up to the Lord.
No.
This too shall pass. No. When Barack Obama was elected president, he was elected president with a record turnout at the polls.
Yeah. Mamdani right now in New York, more people have voted than we've seen vote, especially in early voting.
Absolutely. But let me tell you what we have to be careful of. You turn out in record numbers to elect somebody. And then when it comes time for re-election, we decide that we've done our job. When we won with Bill Clinton, it was a record turnout at that time. 2 years later, we lost 56 Democrats. And the Republicans got the same vote in 1994 they got in 1992.
Right.
But the black turnout in 1994 was way down from 1992. Same thing happened with Obama. When Obama got elected in 2008, a record turnout. In 2010, we lost 50-some-odd seats. Why? Because the turnout in 10 was way down from 8. So the attitude was, well, we've elected Obama, he's going to do it for us. No. He's got to have a supporting cast. During the 4 years that Obama was president, we lost 1,050 legislative seats across the country. Now, what did that mean? We wonder what happened with redistricting? Because redistricting takes place at the legislative level back in the states. And so I'm now the last Democrat left. When I came to Congress, I was one Democrat. John Spratt was there. We had a Democrat in the 3rd Congressional District. Butler Derrick was there. We had more. Fritz Hollins was in the Senate.
And we see this in Texas now.
Texas is going the same way. So the point I'm making is you cannot sit back after the election and says, I don't need to vote anymore.
Right.
Because when you don't show up at the polls, you may not have the president on the ballot. And that's what I love so much about what happened with Mandame, what happened over in New Jersey.
Yeah.
In fact, she called me yesterday, and I was driving along here, and she says, you know, when I started feeling good about this election, I said, when she said, someone told me when you left New Jersey, you told them that you were not worried about this election, that your analysis was that I was going to win this race, and I started feeling better about it. That's what she told me yesterday. Well, my analysis was she was going to win because I could feel it, I could see it.
You're like the whisperer when it comes to
well,
the.
you know, there's some things I don't know.
Like that, yeah.
I don't know some things, but one thing I do, I do know
when
politics.
you know it, you know it.
Yes.
And seeing Mary Sheffield in Detroit, that was really exciting.
Absolutely. Her dad is a preacher, too.
Yes.
I know her very
Horse.
well. Yeah. You learn a lot of things growing up in the parsonage. Yeah.
Oh, man, I love it. And, well, I appreciate you. I really am such a fan, so it was exciting for me. I could talk to you all day. I know you have a lot going on. I know
sure.
We're back at it, but I appreciate this book. I'm such a fan of reading, like, true stories, history, understanding history, potentially repeating itself as it has been, but also knowing, like, what we're standing on. You're standing on the first 8, right, in South Carolina, and we need to know that history of South Carolina. You've been in office for over 30 years, and just making some great, amazing, positive changes, but we all got to make sure that we support that, too. I saw you talking about Hakeem Jeffries also on MSNBC earlier, and just discussing, because I feel like he gets a lot of criticism for not being more vocal, stronger. And they say, you know, Democrats need to fight harder and stop trying to do things by the book all the time.
Well, Hakeem is a great leader. He has a tremendous ability to keep our caucus together. If you've got a big tent, you've got to be able to allow a diversity of thought to exist under that tent. And I'll close with this. I mentioned earlier that I have 3 daughters. Those 3 girls are as different as night and day. Mignon, who's with me on this trip, Mignon is a very independent thinker. I don't think she's ever said, she's over 60 years old, she's never said a contrary word to me in her life. But she keeps counsel to herself. When we were in business together, I used to tell her what we want to do, and she would agree. But when that newspaper came out, it was exactly the way she wanted to do it. But that's the way she is. Jennifer, married, 2 children, and she's a grandmother. But Jennifer is always calling me, as she did yesterday, with a suggestion, and sent me a text this morning, always wanting advice from me. I said to her one time, Jennifer, go ask your husband, I gave you away. That's my youngest daughter, Angela, is so contrary. I don't care what you say to Angela, she's going to have the last word. You just have to just accept the fact that it may not be, you may not be able to understand it, but she's going to mumble the last word. I don't treat them the same way. They're different. I treat them according to their needs. Angela needs things that Mignon does not need. So why would I waste on Mignon that which Angela needs? So your love is based upon the need. And that's the way Hakeem is. He recognizes that he's got a big tent party, and there are people in the South who cannot say things that you might be able to get away with saying in the North. And the same thing for the East and the West. So keep the tent big enough. Keep the atmosphere that exists in the tent of such that everybody under it can feel comfortable working with each other to find common ground. That's just the way the guy is. I appreciate that about him. I spend a lot of time with him. And I do believe that is where success is. If you think that all you need is for somebody cursing somebody out, you will never hear me publicly using profanity. I don't do it.
But privately?
Come on now.
I know.
You know, really.
I don't know how you couldn't.
Yeah, because you got to keep the atmosphere right. Because I can say something to you in private, and it's one thing. I say the same thing to you in public.
It's a whole
different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way Hakeem is. And so I would say to people, look, give the guy a benefit for trying to take, we got about 15 caucuses within the Democratic caucus. The Black caucus, Hispanic caucus, Asian Pacific Islanders, Progressive caucus, the Blue Dogs. We just got a bunch of them. He's got to keep all of them together. On the other side, they all kowtow to the megas.
Yeah, they all fell in line.
Oh.
Yeah, it don't matter.
Don't matter.
They could know it's wrong, but they're going to be right there.
They're going to be right there.
Right in line.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming through. This was such an honor to have you. The First Eight, a personal history of the pioneering Black congressman who shaped a nation. I learned so much from reading this. I thank you for that. And I thank you for coming here today.
I appreciate it.
All right. It's way up.